Hey, good morning from Kansas City. Welcome to SportsBeat Live, our weekly discussion about the Royals with the star folks who know them best. And with you, please join in the conversation with your questions and comments. Want to thank the University of Kansas Health System. They've been with us all year as our sponsor, and you will hear from them later in the show. Good morning to Lynn Worthy and Sam Mellinger for being here. What's up, guys?
What's up?
Good morning.
Yeah, Vahe Gregorian could not be with us. He is, as we say in the business, on assignment. He really is. He really is. I kind of lied the last few weeks saying that and he was on vacation, but no, he's really on assignment this time. So we'll get Vahe back next week. All right, guys. Here's where I want to start today. Before young Lynn Worthy was knocking around the minor leagues, covering minor league ball in the Northeast, and when an even younger Sam Mellinger was rooting for Bo Jackson. I was a baseball fan as a kid, and when I was young, I started to hear about this thing called baseball bennies. And I was a kid. What do I know? Baseball bennies didn't mean anything much to me. When I got older, I later found out those weren't a great thing. Those were like stimulants, right? Drugs. Baseball players were using bennies to, basically, as stimulants. Well, I got a different definition of baseball benny these days, and Andrew Benintendi is the Benny of the Royals. He's playing great, and he's the American League Player of the Week. And I think that prompts a discussion about what his future with the Royals is. Before we get into that, I wanted to show you some Andrew Benintendi highlights from this past week. Let's go ahead and roll that back.
Benintendi hits it high in the air to right field. That ball is way out of here. So he did get one in the strike zone, and Benintendi, who's a very good changeup hitter, lifts it to right, and the Royals have a 3-0 lead in the first inning. And Benintendi goes up the middle and into center field. And he has a 3-hit game. And a drive to left field. Ref Snyder is at the wall. Gone! Base hit number 4. Home run number 2, and Andrew Benintendi has his second 5-run game of the trip. Clutch. And a line drive is into center field. Nicky Lopez is going to come home on Buxton. The throw was cut off by Sano, and the Royals are on the board. And Benintendi drives in another run. That is his 13th on this trip. Benintendi hits it to the gap in left center field, and that's going to be down. That is his second hit and his 12th on this trip.
Those highlights, of course, courtesy of Bally Sports. Those were from the Royals' recent road trip where they went 4-3. I think that's right. Yeah, 4-3 at Baltimore and Minnesota. Andrew Benintendi was terrific in those games. At least in the last 5, 12 RBIs, hit 545, and of course he's the American League Player of the Week. That's as a stretch. He's that's kind of Salvador Perez molten hot from a month or so ago. Lynn, this is about as well as I've seen Andrew Benintendi hit in a Royals uniform, and maybe I don't know what he has said about his career. Of course he was with Boston before Kansas City. Has he had a stretch like this for the Royals this year?
Well, for over 7 days, I'm not sure that he's matched that, but I know for the month of May, I believe it was May, he was hitting over 300, and he was, I think he was their player of the month for May. I don't remember what the numbers were like. I want to say it was 330, but I'm not sure, and that was over a full month. The thing with him has just been, even I think it was the first game in Baltimore, we talked about where he felt like he was at. He talked about being frustrated because he felt like when he got going, then something happened. Like he broke his rib. Then he got back and started to get into the swing of things, and he had the shoulder injury and had to take a week off and was easing back into that. And now he's finally feels like he's back where he should be. So you see glimpses of it. I think I keep going back to May because it was sustained over like a month or maybe even a little bit longer. But this week has been just, he had, I think he matched the Royals record for one road trip with RBIs. And then we saw it both sides too. We saw him steal a home run away. We saw him throw a guy out at the plate. So he's, really been everything that lets you know why they were so excited when they got that trade pulled off in February.
Yeah, you're right. Clutch defense too. Climbed the wall to take the home run away in Baltimore, and then he had the assist to keep the Orioles off the board in the game. The Royals ended up winning 6-0, but at the time it was either scoreless or 1-0 Royals in Baltimore. No, it's been quite a stretch for him. I think Royals fans were excited when he signed or when he was acquired in the trade. But there was a little bit of hesitation because the Royals, the two main players that the Royals gave up, and they were to different teams, were Franchy Cordero to the Red Sox and Khalil Lee to the New York Mets. And Royals fans kind of not 100% sure what they had in either one of those guys. But just at least based on this year alone, Khalil Lee just has had basically a cup of coffee with the Mets, and Cordero in something like, I think I read this, 48 games is hitting 189 for Boston. So at least, Sam, it looks like the Royals got at least for now the better of this deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those like classic trades where it's they're getting certainty back, right? Like Khalil Lee and they're giving up a lot of service time with those guys too. And there's a chance that Khalil Lee could turn into a really good player, but he also strikes out a lot. There's some holes in his game. And Cordero, like Royals fans think Mondesi can't stay healthy, and they're right. But Cordero has had, a longer history of this. He's been. They just needed just some certainty, just a legit everyday big leaguer in that spot. Gordon's gone, and just a guy that can do different things. I think the other option would have been either to assume that Cordero can do it across, maybe 140 or whatever, or maybe Kyle Isbell, can maybe slide over into that spot in left field. So I think all things considered, you'd have to say that the Royals made the right decision there. It'll be interesting to me what they do. Lynn, he is arbitration eligible, right? For next season, the Royals have control, and then he's scheduled for free agency after that. It's just that's an interesting situation to me. Like players usually like to hit free agency. The Royals have obviously some guys they're excited about in the minor leagues, and maybe they want that open spot in left field. But he's been a really good player, by all accounts, a good teammate. They'd like to have him around. It's just it'll be an interesting decision what they do with the money there.
Yeah, do we project him to be the left? First of all, just for next season, Royals bring him back, don't they, Lynn?
Yeah. I mean, it's just going to be a matter of coming to a good arbitration number. But I mean, yeah, you bring him back, and then even if you don't lock him up for any sort of extended period, then maybe he's a guy who has value at a trade deadline if you're ready to bring up somebody from the minors, if you're ready to make room for somebody and you got to start moving guys around, and left field becomes a spot where you can put somebody to make room on the infield or somewhere else for one of these other guys. And the other thing is remember they weren't even paying his full freight this year because they got money from Boston too. So I mean, you get into production they had this year. You in that trade, you also got, I want to say it was 2.8 or 2.6 or something like that of what his money for this year came from Boston. So you pay him next year, and then if there's trade value there to make room, or if you feel like he's your guy, then maybe you can try and work something out to keep him longer.
That's the interesting part, is if both sides kind of feel like this is a relationship that they want to continue, because it's entirely possible that he has an OPS around 800. I think his career OPS is near there. The Royals maybe jump a spot or two in the standings, and at that point, it's a really kind of interesting deal about whether they want to do it long term. It's just he's a good player. He can do a lot of different things, but it's one of those, do you roll the dice a little bit that one of these young guys is going to come up and be better? It's just it's a really interesting situation.
Starting left fielder for a world champion Red Sox team in 18. He's 27 years old, and I think his stat line right now, his home run power totals, is his percentages might not be too dissimilar to what Alex Gordon was at similar junction of his age anyway, and maybe not point in career but age, and when I think about the Royals for next season, and we're going to talk about that in a moment, I think about all the positions that are, where the Royals either have a glut of candidates or candidates who I can't identify right now for certain positions. But left field is one that I think, okay, you check that box. You've got Andrew Benintendi in left field, and stays healthy. You got a guy who play 150 games and give you, maybe 15 to 20 home runs, 80 RBIs, and as you said, an 800 OPS, which is, you'll take that with this team. So, I don't know. This last week I hadn't thought much about Benintendi. He hadn't given us a whole lot to think about. It's just solid, above average season. I don't know what his WAR, defense and overall WAR is, but I like him in the lineup, and I'll tell you one thing I really like about him is his power to the opposite field. He's one of those a couple of his home runs this year. He muscled up, and even at Kauffman Stadium has gone oppo at the K, and of course we saw the highlight of one of those. I think it was at Minnesota going the opposite field as well. Another have a longish distance for a home run. So, Lynn, am I right? We talked about this before, but I think the Royals can check that box about Benintendi for next season.
Yeah, if they want to, they definitely can. Just pencil him in left field and work around that and say, okay, well, we've got that one taken care of, and the other spots are the ones that we need to focus on. I wouldn't necessarily put so much emphasis on his power, because that was actually the big thing coming in right after the trade. Was last year when he got power centric the last couple of years, that's where his numbers took that dip, and that's where a lot of people at least fans in Boston were starting to sour on him a little bit, like, oh, he wasn't what he was the first couple of years. It was because he started to think more power and all that sort of thing. And this year he's really sort of tried to get more back into that line drive, use the middle of the field, especially playing at Kauffman. That's going to be the key for him. So the power stuff, he'll hit some, but playing Kauffman and being part of the lineup, ideally, you've got some guys in there who can hit for power, that you're not relying on him for that as much as just to be a consistent hitter and a consistent at bat.
One thing I think about him a lot, and Blair, you just mentioned he was the starting left fielder, and I think hit like second in the order, right? When the Red Sox won the World Series a few years back. He seems like the kind of player that looks better on a good team. Does that make sense? Like he can be right there in the mix with a good team, but he's not, the kind of guy that you can win with, but not because of, I guess, is sort of the shorthand. He's got like some David DeJesus in him a little bit in that way. And I think, defensively, he's fine. Like, I think he's fit the reputation that he had in Boston. Totally different outfield. I don't know that you can go from a more different outfield unless you go to Coors Field or something. But, I think he's got a reputation as like a good defender. Like, he's fine. Like, he's not Alex Gordon. He's not going to win Gold Gloves. But he's also not, Jorge Soler, in the outfield, or Olivares or whatever. So I think he's a really good piece. He's a really good piece. They got to build around him, obviously, but he's a guy you can win with for sure.
I really like the David DeJesus comp. A little bit different kind of players. DeJesus, of course, was a center fielder, covered a lot of ground. Benintendi, a left fielder, but I see that automatic, just right away. The types of hitters that they are. So before we go to a break, and I want to talk about what the 2022 lineup would look like. You mentioned it, Sam. Edward Olivares. What an interesting season he has had. I think we all kind of felt bad for a player who was, shuttling between Kansas City and Omaha as often as he was. And then, that play in Baltimore that happened 6 days ago, it was the day after the previous show ran, where, he playing center field, goes into right field and disrupts, Hunter Dozier from making the catch, which I think Hunter Dozier still should have made the catch. However, that was the signature play in the 9-run 8th inning by the Baltimore Orioles in the 9-8 loss. What's the future of Edward Olivares with this team, Lynn? What do you see a future for him here?
I mean, I think there's a future. I'm just not sure what it is yet, because I think that's part of figuring out what this outfield is going to look like. I don't think it's in center field. I think defensively he's still got some rough edges that, and that was sort of the word last year. And we've seen him this year only sort of play the corners, and we've seen, a couple of balls that were adventures in right field this year, just in the short time that he's been around. I mean, they like him. Obviously, there's potential there, especially offensively. I mean, he's an athlete, and he's got power, some pop in that bat for a guy who's a sort of a more longer, leaner type guy. But I'm not sure what the end game is there with him, but I think he's a piece that they want to hold on to and see what develops there. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure if they're sure what the ultimate role is for him.
Yeah, his again, going back and forth as often as he has this year, it's been tough for him to develop, and I don't know. I'll tell you what. Let's do this. Let's take a break here, and when we come back, let's look at what an opening day 2022 lineup for the Royals will be. And this is a note that I lifted straight from Mellinger Minutes just a little while ago. So we'll be right back.
The Kansas City Royals lineup is backed up by the region's strongest team in healthcare, the University of Kansas Health System. We both suit up with one goal in mind: to win. The University of Kansas Health System, official healthcare provider of the Royals.
Okay, Sam, I don't know exactly how you worded this, but I was deep into your Mellinger Minutes today and saw that you had projected a lineup. Now, don't get caught up in the batting order, but I was more curious about the positions anyway. And so I'll read it out, and you tell me what you had in mind when you made this. You had Whit Merrifield at second, Lopez at short, Mondesi in right, Mondesi in right, by the way. Sal Perez catching, Santana the DH, Bobby Witt Jr. in center field, Benintendis in left, Nick Prado at first, and Melendez at third base. That's something we need to talk about too. So that's obviously a possibility of projection of. Is that sort of a little combination of maybe not opening day, but best possible scenario for the Royals to be competitive second half of next season?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's lots and lots and lots of speculation, right? And there's some moving parts there, and I think the most awkward in there is probably Mondesi in right field. But I do think that they're not just going to move him. They're not just going to let him play third, DH, and that's it. I find that hard to believe. I think they're going to add some outfield to him next year. It makes all the sense in the world, right? With how athletic he is and all that. And the Bobby Witt Jr. thing, I think they need to see what they have in, just see if he can play center field. He's more than enough athlete to do it. That doesn't mean he can play it, but he's more than enough athlete to do it. And I know that these are conversations that they've had, and I would expect that to be one of the, the exit interviews after the season of, hey, just try it. See if you can get comfortable We'll see what it looks like in spring training and go from there. Because if he can do that, I just think it opens up a lot of other stuff. You open up third base a little bit more. And I think that MJ Melendez, I mean, my goodness, he's having a monster season in the minor leagues. And, if he is that kind of bat, I think that you want him on the field and, or in the lineup. And, he's got the arm, he's got great hands. I think they've looked at him a little bit at a corner outfield spot. I don't know that he's like super agile and athletic to do that, but they've tried him at third base in Omaha. And, all I've seen is the one clip that I put in the minutes there. I mean, he covered a lot of ground, to catch a foul ball. I mean, that was a nice play. So there's just, look, I think they're going to this could be a team that has 100 different defensive lineups, and batting order combinations next season, just because between Witt Jr., Mondesi, Whit Merrifield, Hunter Dozier, Bobby Witt Jr., MJ Melendez. I mean, it's just a lot of guys that can play 2, 3, 4 positions. So it's fun to kind of toss it up and see how you can get everybody in. And that lineup that I put in there, you still have Dozier, who would play a lot, corner outfield, corner infield. I think Olivares can be a fourth outfielder for you and play and not hurt you that way. So it's a lot of moving parts. But for once, it's like good moving parts, like the Royals have had teams before. You're like, I don't know, maybe this guy can do it. Now you've got like actual dudes that you feel good about to move around. Dealing
a little more from a position of strength than a position of weakness in previous years. So Mike writes in, says, send Monty the winter ball and have him play third base outfield there. So he carries that into spring training and hopefully break through at other positions. Pray that he stays healthy. Absolutely. We'll hear on that. Lynn, what's interesting to me about the Royals, and I don't know if this is a trend, I don't know how many other teams are doing this, but the number of Royals players that are being, played at different positions, and Melendez now playing some third base in Omaha. We're talking about Bobby Witt Jr. at multiple positions, Mondesi at multiple positions, sort of the Whit Merrifield school of multiple position players. That obviously gives the Royals flexibility when deciding a lineup. As Sam said, they could have 100 different defensive lineups. Maybe go back to being old school. It seemed like back in the day, everybody just had their position and that's what they played, and you didn't see Eric Hosmer anywhere but first base or Moose anywhere but third. And it was a stop the presses moment when Alex Gordon moved from third base to the outfield. I'm surprised we didn't do a special section on that at the Star, but the fact that there's so much flexibility and versatility, will the Royals be well served by this?
I think potentially, yes. I mean, I think you look at a team like Tampa Bay, and they've had, they've gone to World Series with guys who've played multiple positions, guys who've bounced around, guys who've been, played that way with guys who come off the bench and played in spots, regularly, even in playoff games. Maybe not start games, but we'll come in and play games and guys will move around. So I think if you have the right guys, if you have if you don't have necessarily a lineup that's just stacked the way you can just set it every day and leave it, then this is the other option. I mean, I think Mike Matheny's talked about that in the past, just about, like obviously the idea, you'd love to have a lineup where you just set it and leave it alone and you don't have to do anything with it. But, I think he's said in the past, like last year in this series, they're not at that point yet. And it might be where you're, a smaller market team like a Tampa or Kansas City that, maybe you don't get to that point, or maybe the best option for you is to have guys that move around to maximize the athletes you have, the bats you have, the matchups you have from a night to night basis. So I think having versatility, and then also just, where they're at, where you still have some guys who you're not 100% sure what they're, what they're going to be, or they're not at that, they haven't reached their peak yet. While they're getting there, you still might have other guys that are worth using, worth getting something out of. Like, maybe it's where you still squeeze what you can out of a Carlos Santana or a Michael A. Taylor or, whoever it is, while you're getting what you can out of, a young Nick Prado, Bobby Witt Jr., Edward Olivares, guys who, you can get something from, but maybe aren't everyday players yet. So, I mean, that's I don't think that's out of the question. I don't think it's something that is, untenable. I think Tampa has proved that. It's just a matter of finding the right guys, finding the right mix, and being able to carry that out.
I guess my only request, I guess, of the Royals is don't wait till they get to the major leagues to start moving them around. This is something that really should happen at, in Omaha, Northwest Arkansas, Quad Cities, Columbia, wherever, that this is, don't wait till they get to Kansas City to introduce a new position to a player. And I will say this, it seems to me that, a player like Hunter Dozier might be better served by squaring up at one position. And I don't know, with something to unlock him. So anyway, just a thought. And hey, let's start to wind down. I will say that, I don't know if you guys noticed, but the San Francisco Giants became the first team in baseball to clinch a playoff position last night. Giants are back in the playoffs. Listen, I just haven't been keeping up with the Giants. I'm sure they've been in the playoffs since the 2014 World Series, but I can't remember them being there. So they are on their way to the postseason. What an organization! I think it's one of the great organizations in baseball, and it looks like there are some wild card positions that still need to be sorted out. And I'm wondering if you guys have a thought on who your favorites would be. It looks like either the Dodgers or the Giants will win the West, and one of them will be the wild card. So it's down to what? Padres, Reds, Cardinals for the AL or for the NL wild card. What do you think, Sam? Who comes out of that race?
Well, the main thing that I keep thinking about is, remember before the season, there was all this talk about whether the Dodgers were going to be the best team ever. Literally, that's what big stories were written about, whether this would be the best team in the history of Major League Baseball. And if not, then certainly it was going to be the Padres that knock them off. And so, of course, the Giants, are the team. And actually that winning streak happened. There were some people sort of wondering if the Giants should sell at one point during the season. And now they're, just kind of boat racing everybody. I mean, they're only a couple games up, against the Dodgers in that division, but, have the best record, I think, in all of baseball, not just the National League, but the best record in all of baseball. I love that. I don't think that kind of thing certainly doesn't happen in the NBA. Sometimes you'll get it in the NFL, but usually that's like a team that you expect to go 4-12, goes 10-6, and gets a wild card spot. It's one of the cool things about baseball. So anyway, moving on that, I still think the Padres have a lot. They just have so much talent, and they've had to play through some injuries. And if they can get healthy a little bit, that's a team that I would expect to rise up a little bit and maybe separate themselves in that group.
Yeah, look, in the American League's crazy. The whole AL East with the way Toronto's played here the last couple of weeks, and the Yankees after their 13-game winning streak. The Yankees have just been in the, kind of in the tank. They won last game, but gosh. So right now, as it stands, the Blue Jays and the Yankees are the wild card teams. Boston is right there, and then right behind those guys, Seattle, Oakland. Those happen to be the two teams the Royals are playing this week. So it's there are some good races coming up here in the, coming down the stretch, the final 3 weeks. The Royals aren't part of them, but they'll have a say with games against the Mariners and the A's this week. So we're going to wrap it up for today. I want to thank Lynn Worthy and Sam Mellinger for being with us, for Beth Welsh for producing the show, and a couple little programming notes. Be sure to be with us a week from today. I think we're going to have a special guest. I won't jinx it by telling you who it is, but we'll get you word in advance who I think will be joining us at this time next Tuesday. And always we've got Chiefs SportsBeat Lives coming up 9:30 on Thursday, and of course post game from the Chiefs. So For Lynn, for Sam, for Beth Welsh, thanks a lot, and we will talk to you again soon.